As everyone knows, this topic is very relevant right now. AI seems like it's at the center of every other discussion in technology, and cloud ops is no different. We're entering a new phase as AI moves from human in the loop agents and automations to systems that recommend and execute operational change. This topic is front and center. So we couldn't be more excited to share our discussion with the panel, and we're going to dive right in. But before we get started, let me introduce myself. I'm Brian Kathman, co-founder and CEO of OpsCanvas. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and the last business that I built was an AI messaging platform running in the cloud. So I've really spent most of the last 13 years working in some way, shape, or form with all the complexities and the promise of cloud operations and AI and everything in between. And so I'm excited for this conversation. And I also represent OpsCanvas. For those of you that aren't familiar with OpsCanvas, we are excited to host the discussion because AI and CloudOps comes up in almost every conversation that we have, whether it's with our partners, our prospects, our customers, even the random person that you run into that is excited about what we're doing because we're working with AI in crafting a lot of change in the industry. And we're tuned into these risks that everyone is going to be talking about today, as well as the opportunities. And so we're really excited to open up that discussion for the broader audience as well. And joining me, we have two panelists, Jason Turim and Dan Greene. And I'm going to hand it over to Jason to start with his introduction, and then Dan, and then we'll dive into the conversation.
Great. Thanks, Brian. I'm Jason Turim, the CTO and co-founder of OpsCanvas with Brian. And I've been programming really since the early days of personal computers and got started sort of professionally with the dawn of the commercial internet. And this is my second company. Previously, I founded and sold Signalvine, which is an NLP-based text messaging platform in higher ed. And today I'm focused on building systems that help organizations bring clarity and control to how their software runs in the cloud. And like Brian, obviously working professionally in software over these last 25, 30 years, I've seen the cloud grow. I've seen how it gets operationalized from, pre-IAC, ClickOps, just getting to know AWS Cloud Consoles to working in sort of multi-cloud environments with organizations of different scales. So real happy to be here and talk about this with Dan and everyone else.
So Jason, just before we go over to Dan, I'm just curious. You're right in the middle of all the action these days with CloudOps. And so I'm wondering, like, what part of the decision-making process that organizations typically have to go through do you spend the most time thinking about or trying to come up with solutions for?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest issues, just sort of in my role as a CTO, tech leader, is having to chase down why stuff exists in the cloud, who owns it, explain just this general question of explainability. And it's whether I'm explaining to execs or the board about cloud spend, or I'm talking to teams about, what services live and why is something running? Why is it created? What is it supporting? And all of these questions all stem from the same place, which is explainability. And it's difficult to be able to do that clearly and succinctly. Yeah.
Great, great. Well, hopefully we'll talk about how AI can start to impact some of those challenges. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dan Greene. If you can give us a little introduction on your background.
Sure. Dan Greene, my current role is Chief Architect and VP at Briva. They're an access control company based out of Bethesda. But my history goes back around 30 years, covering everything from e-commerce to e-procurement, from geospatial analytics to DoD systems doing natural language processing, entity extraction, operating at uber scale. For the last 10 or so years, I didn't realize it, but my side title should effectively have been cloud economist. I've been helping companies, both the ones I work for and their clients, understand, control, and overall reduce their spend in the cloud. I am particularly lean towards AWS, but almost all of these functions and capabilities are present in all clouds today, and so they can be translated and applied as needed.
So you're technically a professional Excel user.
I am a professional Excel user and CFO enemy.
That's great. So, but I'm curious. The economics is always can be a headache, and it's always a challenge. But when you're working with cloud operations processes, where do you see the breakdowns, kind of in the real world, happen most often?
The breakdowns happen in we've kind of evolved this cloud model of can it do the thing to can it scale the thing, and now we're actually at the why are we spending so much on the thing? And taking that path has led people to deploy first and ask questions about pricing later, which means things are just put out there and you don't realize it, and the bill comes in at the end of the month and you're surprised. And because of the way these bills present to you, they're line item. They're very low level. This is how much you spent on bandwidth, and this is how much you spent on hard drives this month, but no idea as to why. And that really drives a great way to hide bleeding expenses in the system, whether it be intentional or unintentional. If you don't understand the context of what's going on, then you can't understand why your bill has changed month to month. Most people don't mind spending money in the cloud as long as they're aware of where it's going and why it's going.
That's great. And that's a common theme I'm hearing already. Jason mentioned why, why things are, where they are and who owns them. And you're talking about, why they cost what they do, or why the, costs have gone up. That's all really fascinating. I think it certainly is going to be a part of the conversation coming up. To preview a little bit, if those of you in the audience probably are hearing a lot about why and a lot about the term context. So we're going to talk about that in a minute because it's a really important topic within AI, and it really applies to cloud operations as well. Just evidence on those two answers that you both provided. But before we dive into the AI implications within CloudOps and talk about context graphs and agents and all the fun stuff, I kind of think we should frame this by checking in on the state of CloudOps. And so maybe, Dan, starting with you, I wonder how you would describe the state of cloud operations and what, you talked a little bit about it, but I'm just curious, like what you think the biggest challenges that practitioners are facing today. And kind of from your perspective, that'll help set the tone for maybe some of the things we talk about how AI could be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest shift is the mindset from a sysadmin approach to the cloud. I'm going to run exactly what I would have run in a data center before, but I'm going to run it in the cloud. And the mindset that entails of a set it and forget it mentality versus those that are evolving and using the cloud, well, correctly, for lack of a better term, of expansion, contraction. I am experimenting with this approach and I'm tearing it down when I'm done. And that is fantastic, except for, and I will harp on this often during this talk, of leftovers and things that you forget to clean up after yourself. I've talked in the past about the concept of data hoarding. You can have ops hoarding. I've stood up clusters myself where I've just forgotten that I've left them up and running for weeks. And so getting this kind of the con of being able to stand up any infrastructure you want at any point in time is having the processes and wherewithal and awareness of that you've done it, and so I need to undo it. That wouldn't have been possible in the days where I had to order a 7 1U units costing $150,000, and then they get them. You would not have even thought of that at that time. So how do you manage that in today's world?
And have you seen it sounds like setting up the right processes within CloudOps can be challenging. Have you seen it done well, or do you feel like it's something that nearly every organization that you've worked with struggles with?
It does well until it doesn't. I akin it to there's these personal finance applications, Microsoft Money, QuickBooks, and whatever, and they can track all of your spend, and it's a beautiful thing until you miss a week because you were on vacation, and then you've
Oh,
missed something else, and then it quickly pours away. And so the best intentions are great, but if you don't stay on top of them, then then inevitably structuring your cloud ops and your organization of not just, I harp a lot on spend because obviously that's where I'm focused a lot, but it's really about every unattended resource is also a security risk. It's also threat vectors and wasted cycles for your engineers and troubleshooting issues. So there's more than a direct AWS bill impact for getting these things around there. And companies today are just really beginning to understand that these things need the focus that they truly deserve because they've been blinded by the art of the possible. That I can do this. This is fantastic.
right.
I've literally used the Jurassic Park quote earlier today. If they were so focused on if they could do the thing, whether they should do the thing.
Right.
And so I think that's the state we're in right now is people are trying to frantically put on the brakes and get control of the vehicle to understand what's going on in their cloud. Jason, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, I largely agree with that. I mean, that's just right. I mean, there's always processes that teams are putting up sort of ad hoc. It's never one size fits all. And I don't mean to jump ahead, but there's this promise that out on the horizon, the machine will be able to take care of itself. And how do you combine all of these things together to actually make it work and make it available to implement within an organization running, at scale? I think these are the challenges that exist today, and I think that the promise of the next generation of tooling is very exciting to a lot of people. And then the question is, now how the hell do I do it? I mean, I can see that there's an answer to these questions, but how do I sort of navigate our team to get there?
So Jason, before we jump ahead and get into kind of the future or maybe even the present of newer technologies,
Mm.
what about the cloud operations that you experience that if you had the ability to just change change the mindset of people or just change that as even being a thing, what of cloud operations right now it would be your first thing on the list?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that mindset needs to change so much. I mean, I think that, all professionals in a organization working with software, getting software into the cloud, have a good understanding of what sort of the Lego pieces are. But what I would change is really the amount of toil that's involved. I think there's a strong intuition from practitioners through sort of leadership that all of these answers exist in our systems already but it's still really difficult to sort of get to those answers and then operationalize the answers in a way that doesn't require spinning up like a new 6 month project that I need to do. Like it doesn't make any sense to spend 2 months to save $400 on a cloud bill, but if you could do that in 10 minutes, of course, who wouldn't, right? So there's how are we going to use the tooling going forward to navigate sort of, as Dan was saying, the art of the possible? We feel all this stuff is available to us, and how do we make it happen?
So, so, so you said removing the toil and that being a big part of it. Um, I want to move into another topic, but before I do, Dan, I want to just go back to you for a second and get your take, because I'm sure that you've imagined or dreamed this, that you had that magic wand to remove something about uh, either your day-to-day job or, prior jobs where you had things that you experienced or saw other people have to do that you wish just could be not part of the process. What would be number one on your list?
Well, you joked earlier about me being all about the spreadsheets, and part of my role in this job and in most any other cloud economist role is I have to spend the time and effort to chew through all of that low-level data we get from the providers, run it through a litany of programs and scripts to turn it into something digestible. Then I throw that into a spreadsheet, or then I can see it visually. Where did I go up and where did I go down? And infer from that what applications are surging or not. And that takes a significant cognitive load. And the reason why that's a problem is I don't want to do that daily. So for me, I look at it once a month or once every 2 weeks. When I have bandwidth, I should be checking on it daily, but it is not possible with the information today. So magic wand wise, instead of me finding out what is going wrong, obviously the dream of AI is and some AI agent tells me what's going wrong as it's going wrong. The sooner you find a leak in your house plumbing, the less you've wasted on water.
But
And that same analogy applies.
I think what's interesting about what you just said is it tells me what's going wrong, because that what is going to change depending at sort of where you are in the cloud operation stack, right? The what for you is someone who's jockeying these spreadsheets is going to be very different for the what for an SRE that has to respond to a bug, or
Mhm.
a software developer that has to write a deployment script. So part of this dream of what the AI and is going to be able to do for us, what the machine will be able to do, is not only alert us that something's going wrong, but be able to figure out who's the right person to alert for the right thing, the right thing that went wrong. It's going to identify what went wrong and be able to associate it with the human or humans that need to know. And that's that's going to require some new way of doing stuff, because traditional programming was, well, we give you we write a program that tells the machine what to look for, and then we respond to these conditions as they come up that we've sort of pre-identified. But I think that the real dream of the future here is that there's a self-awareness, if you will, of, okay, well, we're in this domain of cloud ops. I know how my system should run in the cloud. I know it's not running that way here, and this, my spend spiked, tell Dan, or all of a sudden I'm seeing API errors spike, tell Jason, or etc. So I think just even framing the issue like that represents sort of a new way of thinking about it, or a forward-looking view of it. You know?
So that's actually a great setup and lead into what I wanted to cover next. And this is actually part of the reason that the topic of the webinar, we wanted to talk about AI. There's a lot happening in the world of AI, not just within CloudOps. We've been seeing a lot buzzing around in the last month or two around this idea of context graphs, which is really been a great area of discussion. In fact, it's such an important part, I guess, Jason, to your world, that you actually wrote a white paper on it about the cloud intelligence graph, which I'm going to ask you here in a second to explain more about that. But I think the point being here is that there's a lot of new concepts and information that's constantly coming in to the world of AI, and so it's really can be hard to keep up with it. So white papers are a great way to certainly educate people on uh, your point of view. But before we even go there, I'm just curious, because I think we all might define it a little bit differently. The term context is used in everyday talk. It's used in AI. It's used in context graphs. So,
Mhm.
Jason, could you maybe just start by telling us a little bit about what is context and then what is a context graph, just so that the audience has a familiarity of what your white paper is about?
Sure. So generally speaking, context means I guess I would say the ambient knowledge behind where we the ambient knowledge that results in where we're currently. That's very vague and abstract, I know. It's about understanding our current state of affairs in the cloud, specifically in CloudOps. We know that a Kubernetes server is running in a cluster, but it's very difficult to find out why it was deployed, who deployed it, when it was deployed, when it was last updated, when were the last services deployed into it. So all of that sort of missing information is what I consider the context. And why, and specifically as it applies to sort of the context graph that is people are sort of talking about, that's sort of a older idea in computer science. I mean, we've had knowledge graphs have been part of computer science for a long time. And the whole idea is about how do you encode this sort of general knowledge in such a way that machines can read and react to it, read and understand it, take action based on uh, data rather that humans have an intuition about. And that's why it's so important in AI because, and I don't mean to skip ahead or do a make a recursive definition here, but the the AI in the future is going to need to be working from the same general knowledge of systems that humans have in order for them to work reliably. And so the whole idea of the context graph is how do you encode that knowledge, the sort of the who, what, where, why of current systems into machine understandable representation that you can feed to an agent. And then a really nice byproduct of that is that same information is actually useful to human operators as well. And that's what's going to really help, help build trust in AI agents. I can see the context, I can understand the context that I'm giving to an AI agent. It makes sense to me, and then I can validate that the AI agent is making the same decision or at least a reasonable decision based on the context that I would when I'm looking at that same data. And right now, it's largely missing. As I mentioned, this has been around in computer science for a long time. This idea of knowledge graphs and encoding ontologies and building sort of a worldview that's machine actionable. And I think context graph is really a new way of talking about that same underlying concept. Although with differences reflecting sort of the latest technology. I mean, knowledge graphs have been being built over the last 30 some years, and this is a relatively new implementation of an old idea.
So that's great. And I, for anyone that hasn't read your white paper, if they want to read it, I know it gets a little technical. It's available on our website, and I'm sure that we'll send out a link to it after the webinar. One of the inspirations, I think, for context graphs becoming a buzz, Foundation Capital wrote a really great essay on this. And one of the things that they talked about really incorporating is how do you capture decisions? Because if you don't capture decisions and the context around those decisions, or what they call decision traces, then it's really hard for an agent in the future to have a reference point of how to make a decision because they don't have a history of the context of those prior decisions. And so it's a really fascinating kind of way to think about cloud operations because there's decisions being made all the time. And for an agent to really be able to operate more autonomously, it's going to have that context or those decision traces. And I'm curious, Dan, kind of turning to you because I'm sure you had a chance to kind of relate to some of what Jason was bringing up in his white paper on the cloud intelligence graph. And when you think about kind of where the opportunities are
Mhm.
within CloudOps, what the white paper kind of laid out really kind of resonated with you?
I mean, there's a couple of things. One of the funny things I'd like to bring up about the white paper is I think the white paper buried the lead. You waited until about three-quarters of the way through to say the reason it matters is the why. And that's to me, every time I've had to troubleshoot a problem, or every time I've had to, whether it be a technical, financial, what have you, understanding the causality of why this happened is critical to both diagnosing what happened and how to stop it from happening. Um, and to me, that was the I kept on saying, if I had it on printed paper, I would have been writing the word why a bunch of times on the margin. I can't do that on a computer screen. I get in trouble. Um, for
You sound like
me,
my English teachers.
looking at this, every company that I've either worked for or consulted with has had some rock star SRE person, or it might be a QA person or an engineer that always seemed to know how this came to be, how this came to pass. They know where the bodies are buried, they know the understanding, and sometimes they're the cause of and the solution to the problem. Don't get me wrong. There's a great book came out a long time ago called The Phoenix Project to refer to this as the rock star. And this context graph is an attempt at capturing the knowledge in a manner that that person would have in their brain.
Exactly.
Every company that has one of these leans on heavily to diagnose and solve problems. And so this is an attempt at moving from that. We are 100% dependent upon this person to solve all of our problems, or we try to go through the fool's exercise of extracting all their knowledge and trying to write it into a Wikipedia somewhere that goes out of date within about 20 minutes. This is kind of the modern AI era of trying to capture a decision, the ability to have all the information and background to make intelligent decisions. If you wrote this out nicely, a human being could follow it, but they would fail at a certain scale. The promise of AI is that wouldn't happen. Yeah, and that's kind of an exciting area that we can have these SRE agents, cost control agents, operational agents that work off of this related information. I think that's the key in all of the graph is it's not just a collection of information, it's the relationship between them that matters. I briefly touched that I did like entity extraction in the past, and pulling out people involved is one thing, but their relationships to each other made the difference. It is an order of magnitude more powerful to not just have the facts, but how they relate to each other. And putting that in the tooling of the AI landscape we have today makes it really potentially able to deliver the promise. And I'm generally a skeptic, but I am optimistic on this front.
I think you touched on another really important aspect of why the notion of context graph is catching such fire is because when one person is working with an AI agent, say it's Claude Code, where they're making suggestions and a human can agree or disagree with it explicitly, that's one operating model. But I think when people think project into the future what an agentic sort of cloud ops workload looks like, it is, as you say, going to be many agents. And if many agents, they need to reason from the same starting point. And that's really what the context graph and the decision traces provide. They're providing this common layer that each of these specialized agents will be able to work from and be able to arrive at the same end game. I mean, we've all gone to ChatGPT, and if you put the same prompt in multiple times, you get different answers. It's fundamentally non-deterministic, and we wouldn't want to have multiple agents in a critical path just sort of making up their own answers based on not coming from a solid foundation. And I think that's the whole that's the real power of this idea and the real power of what it brings to cloud ops and AI specifically.
And Jason, can you, one thing that we had talked about, I think it was around the time that you were writing the white paper, and we were talking a little bit about context graphs and kind of how context graphs are pulling from different systems of record to
Mm.
create the context to inform the state of affairs and the relationships around a decision and all of that. That's really, it's a fascinating kind of way of thinking about it, as this glue within an operation and all the data. But the thing that you said that really struck me, and I'd love to hear you kind of expand upon this, is that context graphs are not the same as a system of record, in the sense that system of record has data of what had happened, whereas context graphs are different. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah, sure, love to. You said it very well, but I'll
Okay.
try to add. I'll try to add. The idea here is that we have great tools in place in CloudOps, and anyone who's involved in deploying software to the cloud knows them probably very well. We have great CI pipelines, we have observability, we have FinOps tooling, we have security tooling, we have all these tools that do a really good job of saying this is where your cloud is right now. And the issues that sort of organizations run into is that it's not enough, because so much of the context that's missing is like what happened leading up to the data that we have stored in the existing systems of record. And part of sort of my thesis in the white paper is that it's not a question of we have too many tools or the tools we have don't do enough. I think we have great tools in place that do really good things. They just don't capture the full picture that's needed today, and certainly not the full picture that will be needed when we want to let AI's agents take over some of the operational responsibility. And so this whole idea of the decision traces is about how do you capture those decisions as they're happening, and how do you do it in such a way that doesn't require orgs to do a rip and replace or lift and shift or any of these cool pithy terms that are huge projects and very expensive projects. How can we uh, put unobtrusive little recorders in place across an organization's workflow so that as your people are doing their day-to-day business, we're able to extract the why behind the button clicks or the why behind the code pushes or whatever it is. And that's what's going to inform this new thing, this context graph, which is going to provide that missing layer of context. And yeah, so I mean, I think that that's the real exciting part about this here, is that it's not about uh, replacing existing tooling. It's about augmenting, and greenfield development is always more fun from a practitioner's perspective. And I think this is an instance where that's really evident, because these tools, like when Git was built, for instance, or GitHub, or any of the enterprise Gits were put on top of Git, you know, they just weren't thinking about how is a commit history going to be used by AI agents that are running in the cloud. Like, this predates so many of the decisions, but Git is a wonderful tool that has really important data, and the answer is not to tear down the stuff that's working well. The stuff is to fill in the gaps in between. I like to talk about it as operationalizing institutional knowledge, and this sort of touches on the point that Dan was making earlier about sort of your org's rock star. If you're lucky, you have one or two people who really know their stuff across the org, and they're the ones who always get shoulder tapped. And and it's just that maybe they just have a longer memory, and so how do we operationalize that? How do we capture that and operationalize it?
So, we're going to move to questions in a minute, but before we do, Dan, I want to turn it back
Mhm.
to you, because you said something, and Jason just referenced it there at the end, that I think was really interesting, in that you're typically a skeptic, but you're optimistic, and this whole notion of capturing the memory of the rock stars in the organization is kind of at the core of the challenge, right? Like, how do you
Right.
actually make that available to AI and for these sort of agentic processes. So could you maybe just say a little bit about kind of what that optimism that you have, like why you have it, what do you see the future of cloud ops being? And maybe even in that same vein, how do you think organizations should be thinking about it to prepare themselves?
Sure. When I say I'm pessimistic, my typical description of AI has always been it's an incredibly eager intern that can do an amazing amount of work, but it doesn't have knowledge on what really to do well. So you have to watch it. There's two ways of watching it: limiting its ability to do things, um, or providing it guidance on better information on what to do things. There was a study that came out recently that senior software engineers actually performed worse when using AI. And I spent a lot of time thinking on this, and I think the answer is because they were maintaining to use our terms here, the context of everything in their brain. And they were telling the AI agent in 3 bullet points what to go do with no guidelines and no concepts, because that's how they would have been told to go do something. And so I think what we need to start aiming at for CloudOps AI agents is give them a heaping load of guidance, have these rock stars write down their thought processes and guidance in an open document. That's the beauty of AI context ingestion. It can handle written text exceptionally well, and give these AI agents very limited scope. We've all read other PRs, press releases on, oh, it nuked my laptop or it deleted all the files on the server. Well, if you wouldn't give an intern the root password to your production servers. Don't give unlimited AI agents the same venue, but give them focused jobs. There'll be a time in the future of if the current path is following a trajectory, companies won't have the HAL 5000 single AI bot that rules them all. The market is very much leaning into specialized agents that work off a centralized knowledge base or context, as well as a secondary context specifically related to their job. You're giving them, you don't have to give them as many technical guardrails if you give them informational guardrails, and let them do things. And for a long time, I highly recommend having a human in the loop. Hey, I want to remove everything from this hard drive. Is that okay? No. It is still far less work for a human to review the work of an AI agent than for a human to do the work of an AI agent. And over time, you'll dial in exactly which ones you should allow to automatically run and which ones you should allow not to. I am a fan of Claude, but I will never use it with the option of says, go and do dangerous things automatically. I'm not there yet. I have coworkers and friends who are.
Right.
But yet isn't the tool's fault, yet is the context's fault. And so that's where I'm leaning. That's where I'm leaning towards is teach them how to pretend that they were a senior engineer. What would a senior engineer know before you ask the question?
Right.
Then the answer is going to come out correct. Otherwise, good luck.
Well, that's actually a great way to I think frame the discussion. And before we move into the Q&A portion, I think that what we've been talking about is all really interesting, a lot of cutting edge concepts and ideas. And the first question that comes in is I think along these lines, and I think this is a great question that you kind of touched on a little bit, Dan. So I'll start with Jason, but then would love for you to answer this too, Dan. The question, one of the questions that came in asked, these solutions you're presenting are really interesting, but how do you avoid over-engineering systems as a result? In other words, when do you think about a system and say either, yes, we need to set up AI agents or whatever, or more importantly, no, we should just focus on the simple solution? Jason?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I think I'm in large agreement that we don't want to over-engineer anything ever. I mean, that's right. We're always trying to keep, just as much as we need and no more. And I think a big driving force behind this idea of context graph and decision traces and how we get there is by being as unobtrusive as possible. So the whole concept that I'm really focused on at my work is how do we build these context graphs in such a way that doesn't require uh, our users to have to reinvent the wheel. They have processes that work and they continue to work. How do you get that institutional knowledge, sort of the glue between the systems of records? How do you collect that in as unobtrusive a way as possible? And once you have that, so there's a decision collection step that has to happen, or a data collection that has to happen. Like we need a way to capture this sort of context that we've been talking about. And then that's on one side. And then on the other side is the, well, how do we act on it? And so if we think about over engineering and how do we use it? So I think a big part of it is the data collection has to be easy to implement those collection mechanisms. And then once you have the data, then it's a question of, well, where do we turn it on first? And I think that that's largely going to be a business decision. There's going to be a business driver, whether maybe you're short-staffed and you need some help deploying your next product. So you'll turn to the machine to maybe generate some IAC and have your software team validate it before you push it. But that IAC generation is all happening based on the context that has been collected in the prior step, this unobtrusive collection step. So I hope that
That's great.
answers.
Yeah, and we're almost at time, but Dan, I'd love for you to just chime in there. I'm sure you have thoughts on how not to over-engineer the future.
Yeah, I mean, my saying is typically I'm an inherently lazy person. I never like to do a task twice. And so I start only engineering solutions upon the second time a problem hits. And I think when you start looking at AI and AI agents and how they can apply to CloudOps is when you see the same family of things come in. And that's kind of when you start looking at trends and patterns. And this is a great strength of AI. That's where I would do it. And going back to what I said before, create targeted individual agents and increase their scope slowly. Don't try to you wouldn't create a single application to do everything that you want your system to do today. That's not a good design pattern. We all know this from software. Look at it the same approach on your AI agents. Have them do a few things and have them do them exceptionally well. And just go. I mean, I'm going to say go slowly. I mean, everyone in the industry right now is saying throw AI at everything.
Go fast.
I'm of the mindset of throw AI at everything that it makes sense to be thrown at. And so make the decision of, does this help my team? AI should be an assistant to the team, not a replacement for the team.
Yeah.
I know we're low on time, so I'll stop there.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, there's so much great information. That's we're at about all the time that we have. But before we go, I want to just say thank you, Dan. Thank you, Jason, for all your wisdom and sharing that with the audience. We had an amazing turnout. And for all of you that have stuck with us and listened to everything, I hope that you heard some things that you really take away and apply to the challenges that you have ahead. And hopefully there's a lot of AI in the future for everyone that helps improve their business and their processes. We are going to have some follow-ups. There'll be information. We mentioned the white paper. There may be a few other things that are being sent as a follow-up. And certainly if you have questions, reach out and let us know. You certainly can ask follow-up questions and we'll answer those, maybe capture them and send them out to the broader group. But thanks again, everyone. This is fantastic. And everyone stay safe and warm. And hopefully you don't have too much snow and ice on the ground and you're able to get home safely. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.